You may turn it on.
All right.
Okay, so I'll talk loud so I don't have to use the mic. I think we've troubleshot a problem. I don't like when stuff doesn't work. So I'm going to introduce Hatem. He's got a pretty complicated bio, so I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. So this is Hatem Haidar with Baker Hughes. And one of the reasons he's up here, I've got to know him. We go to lunch about once a month, he, Chance, and I. And we've just really enjoyed getting to know him. He's a good storyteller, so I was like, man, this would be a good guy to have at IDT. Obviously, when you think about Baker Hughes, you think about technology. So our acronym IDT is Innovation Design Technology. So you've had Jeff talk about innovation and GIS and what they're doing, and then Simone and Bren did a great job talking about design, the design process, which is one of the reasons a lot of us became engineers. And then when I think about Baker Hughes, I think about technology and the wide portfolio. So he's currently VP of Flexible Pipe Systems onshore and non-metallics. So I know he was excited to hear that what Chris said about non-metallics, and we want those being used. And he's had various roles in finance and operations across the Middle East, North Africa, and the U.S. And he's also been involved as a director of investor relations. So Hatem, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And it's really a privilege to be here, and it's a hard act to follow Simone. I'm not an MIT graduate, and I don't have an engineering degree. So when Chris asked me to talk about technology, I was about to tell him, look, I'm going to show up. This is too much, right? I can help you with your P&L. I can help you with economics, but it's really cool to come and talk after Simone, because small companies have a perspective on things, startups, entrepreneurs. If you come from a Baker Hughes legacy of today, it's Edison, it's Howard Hughes, it's R.C. Baker. We've invented a lot. We have in our portfolio like 20,000 patents today, and God knows. So whether you're an engineer or not by degree, you become a technical person by process. So I've been with the company 25 years. I've known Chris for about a year. I feel I've known him forever because he's my go-to person when I get very, very lonely in this job. So I was trying to, I'm not going to talk about Baker Hughes today a lot, and I'm not going to talk about deep technology and standards. I'll just try to kind of, it's a cry for help for our industry as an energy industry. In the past, we used to say energy, which was oil and gas. Today, energy is energy. It's beyond oil and gas, and the road we're heading in. I also try to stay away from energy transition because it's becoming overused. Just to talk about the technology network. So the definition, or what I'm going to talk about, really revolves about the advancement of human well-being. And it's not philosophy. Any technology that we work on that's not here to make life better for people at whatever aspect, I don't think is worth investing time in. Developing technology for economic profit, I don't think that's how the world advanced and how the best technology came through. So a trip down memory lane, you look at the wooden wheel, and I can't imagine life today without that invention. You wouldn't even have a plane that lands on a runway without the advancement of the wheel. Wooden wheel improved mobility. You look at just the toaster. What a great invention. Simple, not high tech. Eat a piece of bread, make your morning look good. You can go and be happy. The print press. We would not be here without the print press. Every engineer knows that. Everyone who reads and learns. And Chris and I have this fantastic relation where he gives me books every time we meet. And I read them because I still like to read a book as a function. But this was in 1436. Today, it's becoming less and less visible in our lives. Penicillin, an invention that was discovered by mistake, increased life expectancy. I had to put the bill there. We know that Baker Hughes. I had to put the bill there. But it didn't disrupt the world. It's not a general purpose technology, but for oil and gas, it is a big deal. I had one of those phones, the mobile phone. I had one of those, and I was in early 20s, and I'd show up at parties, and you can really, you were like, this thing, like, look at this person has a phone. Never in my wildest dreams have I thought that this phone would become whatever is our life. I don't call it the phone anymore. And it's an example of how technology converges and collaborates to come up with something that even the inventor never deemed possible. I don't think anyone of us here can live without their mobile device. Banking, social media, phone, camera, Google Maps. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Google Maps. And then, lastly, the internet, and the way it has connected. And I personally don't think we have seen the full impact of the internet on our lives, the speed by which people learn. And I'm privileged to be someone who travels a lot, and sometimes I travel to countries that are not as advanced industrially like the US. And you see any person there with a laptop and an internet connection, they immediately become equal in their ability to access knowledge. They're your competition. That's what I tell my kids. If you were born into privilege in the past, you had a head start. Today, with the internet and the ability to access learning, nobody has a head start. Anyone who wants to be whatever they want to be has the ability. Just give them a connection, give them the internet. So this is my view on what is described as general purpose technologies. You invent something, it has broad applications, it's disruptive by nature, but then there's a lot of cool things when even on the incremental technology. So you take the wooden wheel and you put rubber on it, and that's incremental, that's not disruptive. The composite material to make rubber is what was disruptive in another general purpose technology. So if you think about technology that way, it's not just a broad definition of what technology means. That's all according to me, right? I'm not an authority on the subject. But it really, everything I do, even at work, it has to improve human well-being. If we can all agree on that, then we're on the right step, because it's getting, mind the gap, Chris. The gap is, the world is losing humanity as it attaches more and more to technology, right? In fact, actually, if you want to read books about AI, if you need to have a master AI computer, that's their only purpose is human well-being, to stop other AIs from destroying humans. Right? That's deep, that you have to read a lot into it. Right? This is from ARK Invest. I don't know if you're familiar with ARK Invest. It's a lady called Kathy Wood. She started ARK Invest. She's the Warren Buffett of today in terms of investment. Very, very smart group of people. They invested early on in Tesla and all those technologies in color. But, we're all familiar with the 4 industrial revolutions. I did some more research. Most of the industrial revolutions happened due to some calamity. Either civil war in the US, World War II, necessity drove invention. And people became either more efficient at doing things or had to invent something to survive. And you start with the need to invest, and then there's a period of time, then that technology proliferates, it gets adopted, then it matures, then it becomes a commodity. It's not a green technology anymore. That's the life cycle. I think Simon showed that for his personal company. But over time, you had 1 or 2 or 3 events driving those industrial revolutions. Since then, from the 80s on, the rate of new technologies coming in, building on whatever prior events we had, has been phenomenal. Artificial intelligence, we haven't even scratched the surface. The only people that did are and it's not properly used, like the Amazons, like the Facebook. You talk to your wife and then you get the advert through algorithms and AI. But we haven't seen it in the healthcare system yet. We haven't seen it, oil and gas, we're not even scratching the surface with using AI and large data to manage and identify some problems. Energy storage is probably going to be the theme for the next 20, 30 years as we try to find different sources of energy, batteries, you name it, right? Robotics. I have a plant, and anyone who does RTP, you know, you have those tapes, and I was like, why don't you have robots changing? Why do we still have humans? I can see it that you can have a plant with no humans, which is not a bad thing. It's not like about you want to fire people. It's about efficiency. It's about making it cheaper and safer and more productive. Genetic sequencing, again, agricultural application, human. I tell my 12-year-old son, I think you guys will be able to buy spare parts when you're in your 80s. I need an eye, I need an arm. It's like you don't need to find a donor. That's the potential there of that technology. Is it going to be misused? Probably, because we're very good at misusing technology. But I'm a positive guy. I don't think I can be hanging on to the negativity of, oh, will it be misused? Will we create monsters? Will we do all that? I think, believe in the human race, and hopefully, imagine how cool it is to buy a new set of eyes instead of walking around with this. And then, of course, blockchain. We all hear about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a symptom of blockchain. Blockchain is going to unravel deficiencies, I think, when it's properly applied in the legal system, medical system, human life system. It's early on. You put all those things together, similar to the smartphone, how they're going to converge, how they're going to collaborate to create cool stuff. I don't think anyone knows. So this is a good take, I think, on the history of where we are with how technology drives human development. This is another angle to look at how the world is probably going to request from us more energy. Population is going from about 6 billion, 7 billion to about 2 billion people. Today, of this 8 we have, there's 800 million people that have no access to energy, to electricity around the world. If you're in the US, you don't see it. Africa, Asia, India, they have no access. I mean, the most basic thing. But guess what? With the internet, those people are demanding energy. So it's becoming a social mandate that I need energy. And with that, it's going to create social problems if we don't provide it. The growth from between 2000 and 2050, the growth of population is coming from Africa. It's coming from Asia. But don't look at the percentages, look at the numbers. 2 billion people in Africa, that population will increase. So keep that in mind. It's a point in the statistical spectrum. Average life of humans has gone up from 50 to about 72 by 2020. And we really don't know where it's going with all the genetic sequencing. How long will we live? And quality of life that goes on with a longer lifespan. Guess who's not living that long? Is companies. Companies are becoming shorter lifespan because new technologies come in. That whole investment, proliferation, maturity, guess what? The investment and proliferation are becoming much faster. Because you invent something in the US today, next morning they can get it in anywhere else in the world. It's on the internet. It used to take 5-6 years for it to get there. And maturity becomes much faster because others are also copying it. You don't have that period of time. So that need for continuous innovation, that needs for continuous technology development is probably at the most critical point in history. You spend 10, 15 years building company, Chris. You need it to live for 40 years, right? You cannot have it die in 10. So this is another, and I'll get to why I'm telling you all this, but this is all fact. This is not opinion. Exxon used to be in 2010 top 10 in the S&P 500. It's not. Look at the top 3 in 2020: Microsoft, Apple, Amazon. Next year, it's going to be probably Teslas and whatever. But all those companies are providing platforms for collaboration. They're providing technology. They're innovating that technology very quickly, but more importantly, they're platforms for collaboration. For energy, technology has always been at the heart, whether it's the drill bit, whether it's, and I'll talk upstream a bit in oil and gas because there is a lot of technology in that. Chris, you said we don't send young people in wireline logging, electrical wireline logging. We send 23-year-old kids out of school with 4 or 5 operators and a truck worth $7-8 million, and they take control of a rig and they log the wells. The youngest managers probably in the industry are the wireline logging engineers. But we're used to using technology. And the future of the energy industry, specifically oil and gas, is going to be predicated on technology development at a much faster pace than we do today. Here's a very controversial slide, and I'll try to explain it quickly and move on. I refrain from giving any projections on oil price because if I could, I won't be here. I'll be a very rich man if I knew what's going on. But energy demand, I think we can all agree that energy demand is going to increase. Everything we do needs energy. Population increase requires more energy. And this is exajoules. So 1 exajoule is equivalent to 163 million barrels of oil in terms of energy need. So in any scenarios, the scenarios that, this is IEA, so it's not a Baker Hughes thing. Under the stated policy scenario, if you collect all the stated policies of all the governments around the world, you get a scenario for energy demand over time. If you go the pledges, which is, CO standings like by 2050, I'm going to do that. And that says in Europe, by 2026, no more hydrocarbon, blah, blah. You get to that the step scenario. And the pledges is the third one. In all scenarios, there's a demand for about 100 million barrels of oil and about 5,000 BCUs of gas, equivalent to 80 million barrels. So 100 to 200 million barrels of oil will be needed under any scenario except the net zero emissions scenario, which lots of people talk about it, but there's no policy to support it, and nobody's even pledged it. You go to COP26, they moved from 2050 to 2070 just in 1 year. So realistically, we have to plan around the announced pledges and the stated policy scenarios of oil and gas is a key 50% of the oil mix. But for it to be relevant, it's not only a matter of investment, because actually you won't have access to the investment unless oil is cheap, competitive against the other resources that are getting tax subsidies and all that. And it has to be clean because of the social mandate. And let's not underestimate the social mandate about clean. We can argue about are emissions causing climate change? Is there climate change? Not a debate. But the social mandate around the world for cleaner energy is not debatable. That's what the young generations are demanding. That's what the world is demanding. So what's our duty to that? Our duty to that is to supply oil and gas cheaper, cleaner, and sustainable. And the question you ask yourself, can we do that if we keep doing what we've been doing all along? And my answer is no. And the answer is reflected actually in Baker Hughes' strategy is no. We need to collaborate because we have been siloed. And you heard me say proudly, 20,000 patents in Baker Hughes. What does that mean? I'm blocking people legally from getting access to 20,000 things of knowledge. That is not going to get us there, in my humble opinion. So my cry to this group is, how is it that we're going to collaborate to deliver this energy collectively to the world? And is there any way to do it without coming up with new technologies that I'll take you to the next page, which we believe in Baker Hughes, 75% of technology, if you want to get to net zero, 75% of the technologies needed don't exist today. They're either ideas. Sorry, yeah. How can we do this between now and 2022 and 2050? One of my jokes is, look, I'll make any pledge for 2050. I'll be retired by 2050. I don't think anyone in this room will not be retired by 2050. Even if you're like 20 years old, you'll probably be retired by 2050. Push it to 2070, I'll be drilling on Mars. But to be realistic, between now and 2030, if we want to do incremental improvement, if we want to deliver cleaner, more sustainable, cheaper energy to the world, great. We cannot escape the emissions. It's happening, it's around the world. The cost per barrel, the incremental cost per barrel, the cash margin per barrel are key to our success, right? That is the need that Simone talked about. How do we address that? If I need to develop a technology, I'll go to somebody like Simone, because big companies like Baker cannot do it. We're too slow. We're not fast enough. Yeah, we have money. We have access to global markets. We have access to relationships around the world. But for someone to churn a technology, I'll go to Chris. I mean, in fact, we're probably your biggest customer now, right? Because if I need something done quickly, I go tell my people, can we create an alternate power source for this test oven? They come to me with a $4 million solution because it solves all the problems in the world. They have Thomas Edison in their mind. I go to Chris, he gives me a $50,000 solution that works as well. So it's in my best interest for Chris to be successful, for me to share my knowledge and my IP and funding, and everyone else in the room. This is what will determine the success. Otherwise, companies like Baker Hughes will not be there. So again, I can't come here without talking about composites. That's my new job. I've been doing it for a year and a half. And when they told me we want you to be the non-metallics leader for Baker, I said, my family comes from farming. Cucumbers and tomatoes are non-metallic. Do you need to do that? They said, no, it has to be polymeric composites, like composites made from oil and gas, because that's what our customers want. So this is the job. And the biggest challenge is, this is not a Baker Hughes slide. Anyone, this is Smart Pipe, this is Baker Hughes, this is everyone. Composite pipe has a clear value prop. It's straightforward. It's cheaper. We've done an independent audited study. It's less emissions than steel by 70%. That's what the audited result came in. We can argue it's cheaper, cleaner, most efficient, all that. And my question to my team was, why aren't we all over the place? As an industry, the whole RTP space, composite non-metallic, is sub 10% adoption around the world. And the answer comes back to collaboration, because there is you talk to the customers, you talk to FEMSA, you talk to everyone. We need to be able to, it was Pigget in the beginning. I don't subscribe to the pigging concept. I need to give you assurance that it's fit for service. And technology hasn't been matured yet. What is heartwarming is that, and the standards around when we talk about energy transition, permeation, to transport hydrogen, CO2, are not even existent. So that's another hurdle that we have. Heartwarming is that FEMSA now is taking the lead on funding projects for fit for service type studies and technologies. And honestly, even from Baker Hughes, I don't want to invent that technology. I don't care who invents that technology. Happy to fund it, happy to play in it, in the development, happy to pay royalties to use it, because it's something good for humanity, right? Obviously, if I can make it myself and make more money, that's good, right? So we're not a nonprofit organization, but if I can do it in 2 years versus 10, 2 years collaborating versus 10 alone, guess what? I'll go for 2 years collaborating. We are also part of DMV, I think, are making a killing on the amount of standard setting they're doing over in Europe on hydrogen transportation, hydrogen storage, hydrogen CO2. There is signs of collaboration, more noticeable outside the US than inside, and sad to say. And I just wanted to use this platform to say, guys, we are here. We need to collaborate more. And we need to collaborate technically more, not just by words. Put people to work, fund them. Big companies like us can create a system, whether it's places to meet, whether it's places to work. If you have an idea, let's work on it together, because this is more existential than economic. For our companies to be there, we need to move fast, and we need to make oil and gas cheaper and cleaner. This is more about Baker Hughes. Again, I took a few hours off from work to be here, so I have to mention Baker Hughes, right? We are investing a ton of money, in the millions of dollars, into the energy technology space, into the energy transition space, into emissions management, into the non-metallics, which I run, into hydrogen, into incubators of smaller companies that need funding and need a space to grow. And again, how do we take them all globally we're in 100 countries, we have 50,000 people. So we take this stuff seriously. We are spending money on it, so it's not just talk. So if anyone wants to collaborate, want to work with us, we're there. We knock on everyone's door also. I mean, we knocked on Chris's door just because we know him. But everyone else is welcome to work with us. So thank you for the time, and thanks, Chris, for the invite.
We're going to get started. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. So as you're moseying back on in, hope you had a good lunch. And this afternoon's a little different. This morning we had some technical presentations. Kind of the main focus this afternoon is we have a panel with a couple of operators, and going to get Chris Hoydell up here, and I think Chris Yoxel's here from Rosen. So we'll have a good opportunity. Before I bring Waylan up, and I'm turning over to Peter, and he's going to talk a little bit about YPP, which stands for Young Pipeline Professionals. A lot of us in this room, it could be OPP, Old Pipeline Professionals, but we're going to hear from the YPP folks right now. So Peter.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, so my name is Peter Hahn. I'm one of the members of YPP, and just wanted to share real quickly about what YPP is and what we do. So YPP stands for Young Pipeline Professionals. Our mission is to connect, educate, and develop the future leaders of the pipeline industry. So I know in the oil and gas industry, a lot of people might have heard the term the great shift change. A lot more people in the industry are starting to retire and plan to retire in the next few years, and we're not bringing in enough young people. And there's that concern of a knowledge gap between the older generation and the younger generation, and making sure what we want to do is close that gap and make sure the young people are able to get that knowledge transfer to themselves so that they could take over for the oil and gas industry. So our objectives are to prepare ourselves to accept the transfer of the duty of care for the industry. We want to educate young pipeline professionals in the pipeline industry. So one big difference about YPP compared to other young professional groups in the industry is that we're mainly focused on educating and training, promoting leadership. It's not just a social club where you come out and, I mean, we do have fun too, but that's not the sole purpose. Membership, so we have about 300 active members across 26 states. We do have a handful of local chapters. Houston is probably the largest one, but we also have one in Tulsa, Columbus, and Atlanta. And I know for the local chapters, we try to do maybe a couple social events or site visits, things like that. The value of the membership, so like I mentioned, we have different events throughout the year. There's actually a symposium that we hold every other year. I have another slide on that. We do bridge workshops. There are leadership opportunities. Currently, we have 14 different positions where young pipeline professionals could be involved with. And we do site visits as well. So if any of you guys out here are interested in hosting a site visit with the Young Pipeline Professionals group, please speak with anyone here, and we'd be happy to help promote that. I mentioned there's the YPP Symposium we hold every other year. Last year it was supposed to be last year, but we didn't have it due to COVID, so we're actually having it next year. But the key topics for this coming YPP Symposium is introduction of hydrogen in pipelines, future of pipeline integrity, pipeline asset security, and the latest technologies in pipeline design. So the date is planned to be April 7th next year, and it will be at the Houston Downtown Aquarium for one day. So if those of you guys that are interested, signups are coming up soon. So what YPP is not. So we're not a poaching ground. We're not a recruiting site where people come and try to get young talent. We have a lot of good talent, but that's not what we're meant to be. And we don't provide our contact lists of our 300 plus members for marketing and spam mail and things like that. So I have to say this because a lot of vendor companies try to reach out and ask for that at times. And we don't endorse specific products or services. It's, again, mainly to educate young pipeline professionals and to promote leadership opportunities. So who can join? You have to be 35 years of age or younger. Sorry for anyone that's outside of that. And you have to also be, you have to be employed or actively seeking employment in the oil and gas industry as well. So we want people that are interested in the oil and gas industry. And student members as well, those that are in universities or college interested can join as well. And the cost to join is free. So the big F word, free. There's no reason why you shouldn't want to join. Oops. So for those that are older than 35, there are still opportunities and ways that you could help YPP. Some opportunities are, we do have the, mentorship program. So we're always looking for other mentors, older mentors that we want to start up and start doing some mentorship programs with the younger folks here. And we also have a corporate liaison position, which is where we pair up a senior person in a company with a YPP member in the same company, and they try to promote YPP within the within your own company by doing lunch and learns and things like that. So we have a couple of those going on already, and we're looking to find more senior folks that could help promote YPP as well. And we're always looking for sponsorships too. I know we're having the symposium next year, so if you're interested in helping promote that or to sponsor that, please reach out. And that was it. We have a table right outside, so myself, Molly will be there this afternoon as well, and we have a number of different YPP folks scattered across the room too. So if you have any questions, please let us know. All right, thank you.
So if you're over 35, don't be offended. It's just how it goes. So for those of you who are under 35, at some point, you'll be over 35. Okay, so our next speaker is a good friend of mine, Waylan Cain. So I had to dig in my Aggie land. So I found some old pictures of Waylan. So if you're an Aggie, you'll understand this. If you're not, I'm sorry. You have to put up with us. So Waylan and I went to A&M longer ago than we want to admit, and we were part of a group. I got to know him through a group called Ross Volunteers, and it's these group of guys here. So basically, it's just a way to harass juniors. So he was a senior. So it's really funny at A&M, somebody that was just a year older than you, they might as well have been 50 years old. You didn't talk to the upperclassmen. So I guess about 3 months ago, I was sitting in my study, and I really want my son, who's 13, to think about a career in the military. And so we're talking. I said, yeah, this guy I knew at A&M. I said he was a head yell leader, and so he's kind of a cool guy. I said he flew F-18s, and he's like, really? So we started talking about Waylan. Well, I hadn't talked to Waylan since we're at A&M, since you graduated in 1990, so like 31 years. I got on LinkedIn, so big plug for LinkedIn. I Googled him on LinkedIn, if that's even possible. And sure enough, he popped up. There he is, and he had a few connections. So that's how I started. So if it hadn't for LinkedIn, I mean, I don't use Facebook, and you probably don't either. So we connected, and he had him and his wife over about a month ago, and just kind of really, we've had life. I became an engineer and blew stuff up. He flew F-18s and probably blew stuff up, But one of the reasons I wanted Waylan to talk, he's not an engineer, so he's not going to, impress us with a bunch of equations and do those kind of things. But one of the things I've always been impressed, and I alluded earlier, is that the military can take young men and women and in a very short period of time through a very good and robust training program, they're equipped to lead in their mid-20s, right? You don't have to be 35 or 40, you can still be a YPP, right? So Waylan's going to talk about some things. He's also going to integrate, because he likes our acronym, IDT, Innovation, Design, and Technology. And, talk a little bit about, obviously, the military innovation, design, and technology is critically important. If we don't have a good military, we're in trouble, right? I mean, unfortunately, everybody doesn't play nicely in the world. So, Waylan, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate your service to our country, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say for us today. That's the clicker. That's it? That's it. Okay. Is it on?
Hello? Okay, there we go. Good. All right, no reverb or anything else like that? Okay, that's good. All right, so what Chris also didn't talk about, though, from my Texas A&M experience, was I'm an animal science major. Okay, so you got that in front of you as well, right? Now, I do work in a defense technology company, right? I did fly kind of complicated toys and stuff like that when I was in the Marine Corps, so I try to speak the vernacular. I looked up a couple of the acronyms that were going on earlier, and I do understand those. So hopefully what I have to say today resonates. I do appreciate the invite to be here. I mean, it's really kind of neat for me, right, to come out and talk to people in the oil and gas industry. Being an Aggie, and I grew up in Conroe, I have a lot of buddies in this industry. So just this last 3 months and today walking around has introduced me a lot more to what they do than I actually got back from them, in the last 31 years since I graduated. So I really appreciate being here. I thank you for that. And here we go. So let me learn how to use this real quick. There we go. That's me. And those are some cool things that we do in my company. We'll talk about those in a minute. Bottom line today, what I wanted to do is kind of take my experiences, and this is what Chris asked me to do, in the Marine Corps, as well as in the defense industry, and I'll talk about how I got into that afterwards, and kind of look at it from an innovation perspective. We'll look at our environments. They're actually very much the same, right? When you're talking oil and gas, Marine Corps, and then also the defense industry. We'll talk about that, but I'm going to focus on the leadership aspect of it, kind of like he alluded to. And when I say leader, I'm kind of also using innovator in the same vernacular, okay? So when I say that, just realize that's the case. And again, I just want to offer some insights into my experiences, right? These are Wayland's experiences in the Marine Corps and the defense industry, and hopefully take some nuggets out, maybe topics of discussion we can to reach later. And my intent is to talk maybe about 20 minutes and then keep maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the end, for questions and answers on whatever you want to ask about, what I present here or whatever. I'll try not to talk too fast, but there's a lot of stuff I want to get through. But again, like I said, if we want to go back afterwards, we can do that. So real quick on my Marine Corps background, I was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. I flew F-18s for about 15 years. I flew for about 18 of them. I did a ground tour with an infantry battalion where you work with air support to them. And I did 2 years at the Pentagon working Marine Corps budgets as an aviation analyst. So I did that. I actually did go to the Naval Fighter Weapons Top Gun School, the WTI, which is the Marine Corps equivalent of that, deployed a bunch of times. And so, those are some experiences I shared there. Real quick, though, can I get a canvas of the audience? I know we have one Marine aviator in the back, Tim, but any other Marines in the audience? Okay, awesome. Better haircut than mine. That's awesome. And then any naval aviation or military aviation folks other than that, y'all? Okay, thank you very much, sir. So again, those three gentlemen can tell if I'm telling lies, right? But I'm going to try to get away from stuff anyway. So that's my Marine Corps background. It culminated in me commanding a squadron out at Miramar of 12 F-18s and about 200 Marines and sailors. And so that's kind of how my career culminated. And we deployed over the Asia Pacific area. And then I came back and I decided to retire. When I retired out of the Marine Corps, I actually entered the defense industry working for Cubic Global Defense. That's who I'm with now. My business unit, we do military training systems. Specifically for my sub-business unit, if you will, we do air combat training systems. So systems I used while I was in the Marine Corps, I actually deal in right now from an IDT perspective, and also obviously supporting the war fighters out there on the ground. Initially, I was a program manager for 3 years, doing operations and maintenance. And then I became a BD person for 4 years. As was noted earlier, it's good coming from an operations background before going to BD. And then I got promoted out of that back to a senior director now as in programs. And my portfolio includes our systems that are out in Asia Pacific, and then also our research and development. Okay, so that's kind of the background I'm speaking from. As I did a little bit of history and looking into this, I already, from the concepts and definitions I'm going to want to hit here, is that, actually, this is different. But that's okay. I can go ahead and hit this. Realistically, from our different, say, markets, there's a lot of similarities in the environments, right? All the environments are dynamic. I'm hearing about aging systems. I'm hearing about, defect inspection, assessment and repair. That's a lot of stuff that we do in the Marine Corps and did as well as in the defense industry. Innovation is key in all of our different markets to bringing actually solutions to war fighters in mind, and then also obviously the oil and gas industry, where the return on investment and the risks are high, right, from a financial perspective, as well as delivering products and ways of life to people, right, all around the United States and the world. And then the other piece is we have to have leaders in our actual organizations to make those things work. So, okay, I'm going to go head through this. And actually, that is me heading out there into Ukuni, Japan, and those are our airplanes. So there we go on that. All right, so a little bit different than I'm expected to have up here, but that's fine. I will talk to it. So bottom line from my experience in the Marine Corps, in the Marine Corps, we were not in the defect inspection and assessment and repair business, kind of like was alluded to. We were breaking things, right? That was our focus. And really, we tried to do that across the dynamics of the spectrum of military conflict. So if you're familiar with Iraq and Afghanistan, part of what we had to operate in was those high threat environments where we go kick the door in, right? You need special tools and capabilities over there that are different than the 2 decades we spent after that, right, trying to make peace and keep peace. So you can imagine that technology and dynamics are quite various and quite dynamic there. So that's one of the things that we worked at. The other thing from a Marine Corps perspective is that we don't play home games, right? So that was one geographic location in the Middle East, right? But we had to be prepared to go to the Indo-Pacific or into Europe, other places, to be able to go take the fight to the enemy, which again adds another variable into an innovation perspective for us. So really, for me as a Marine leader, I was an operator. I'll just throw that out there, right? So I was in operational units almost my whole time, except for the two, actually except for the one time at the Pentagon I talked to you about. And so for me, I really didn't have a lot of chance to influence the design or the technology, right? I was issued to go actually execute my mission. So really, where Marine leadership, they exploited the ITD, trifecta, was in the innovation piece, right? So we would take the tools that were given to us and innovate those, right, according to the mission so that we could succeed, okay? And, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sitting here talking to the wrong slide. Okay, good job, Waylan. So bottom line is I'm already kind of down here towards this graphic. So I wanted to tell Chris, hey, look, those are cool formulas and stuff like that you said I don't use. But from a Marine Corps perspective, I'm only going to talk about the geometry piece here. So we would have to react to threats on the battlefield, okay? But we would only be issued a certain amount of equipment. For me, that was an F-18. It came with certain thrust to weight, certain weapons, certain sensors, which weren't going to change if and when the enemy did get a more maneuverable aircraft, higher thrust to weight, longer stick weapons. So I still had to learn how to succeed in that environment. So the way we did this, one example is just geometry, right? And so just those two little things right there, I'm talking planes of motion, right? Between different airplanes, different thrust to weights, different turn circles where I could actually outmaneuver an aircraft that had more thrust than I did, or had longer stick weapons than I did. When I say stick, I mean longer range, right? So again, from an innovation perspective in the Marine Corps, my experience was I had to innovate with the toys, the science and technology that I was given. Okay, so that really is what influenced me, and that's really kind of what influences the Marine Corps. Because the Marine Corps, what we do is, build leaders, right? And that's kind of, if you see the marketing the Marine Corps does, that's what we profess, right? And from day one, even to get into the Marine Corps, you had to pass through very complex tests, right? Physical and mental, and even to get to wear the title Marine. Okay, but that was just day one, but it doesn't stop, okay? And that's just kind of in the ethos of the Marine Corps, is to build leaders and build innovators. From building leaders, it is actually very formalized in the Marine Corps. I mean, for me, for my training and readiness manual for the F-18 was about 3 inches thick. That's just how I'm supposed to train to become proficient, right, in the technology that's delivered to me, right, in my airplane. Not to mention the volumes of the sensors, right, the weapons and other stuff I had to do. So there's a very big focus on training and getting people into leadership positions. Also is the evaluations, right? In the Marine Corps, very, very focused, very formalized, the evaluations that you go through. And especially if you go up into higher, let's say, ranks and positions where you're going to have authority and leadership responsibilities, there's actually panels. And I sat on a few of them where you have 15 or 20 officers looking, and senior enlisted, looking over every candidate for those actual billets, right, where they'll sit. So again, very, very focused, very formalized to how to build leaders there in the Marine Corps. And the other thing the Marine Corps does is, for me, when I joined my squadron, I was an aviator, that was expected, but I was also given the job of being the embark officer, meaning I had to, within 96 hours, we had to be able to pack up the whole squadron, embark it on strategic lift, and then get somewhere, right, whenever we were on tether to go actually to deploy operations. That was one of my other jobs. So from day one, you're also pressured to actually be able to grow. That wasn't my primary military specialty. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, you're pushed on day one to be a leader in just more than one specialty. And then the other piece of the Marine Corps, it's kind of an up or out mentality, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And we in the Marine Corps, we churn through a lot of young men and women. That's just the business model, okay? But again, as it's up and out, if people want to stay in, they have to perform to a certain level and become leaders, right, in their specific specialty. Mine's Asian, other people are different. And so that's kind of the ethos and the mindset about the Marine Corps from building leaders. So if I summarize, again, the environment's very dynamic, right? Really, the biggest thing that I could control as a Marine was innovating with the designs of technology that I had. And the thing that the Marine Corps made that successful from that innovation perspective is they built leaders and they built innovators from day one, okay? So there's that. All right, let me go to the next slide. Again, same basic things. I'm going to talk about it in just a little bit of a different way. So when I went to the defense industry, I thought, okay, I had everything sorted out. But actually, the defense industry is actually more complicated in my mind, from an environment perspective for leadership, and especially from an innovation perspective, to be able to succeed in, right? Because realistically, whenever I was in the Marine Corps and we went to combat, it was pretty simple. You had one focus, that was the enemy, right? But in the environment, probably the same thing in oil and gas. I mean, holy cow, the stakeholders and all the different things that you have to bring to bear for successful innovation, that's huge, right? So now, different than the Marine Corps, I'm able to influence that technology and that design, right? And so, like I talked about these threats where they come out with airplanes that are better than ours, well, now I can actually affect that technology and get those tools to those innovators on the battlefield, right? The Marine Corps doesn't have a monopoly over innovators on the battlefield. That was just my experience. So with that, some of the other things from a defense industry perspective we look at as well versus just the IDT portion. You have the threat out there. We need actually intelligence on our adversaries, right? And we have to keep one up in them. We have politics, right? I mean, think about it. I heard a little bit about Chris, what you're talking about. Whoa. As a regulator, right? I mean, there's a lot of regulation, in our defense industry, and especially from the politics, which changes maybe every 2 years or 4 years if you're lucky. That's a big influencer. And then, of course, now, instead of in the Marine Corps, I have a lot of financial pressure, right? Profit and loss. And then also, from a resourcing perspective, there's a lot of constraints for me. And again, if you know anything or read anything about the DoD, the acquisition process there is not very, quick, right, or maneuverable. And it's really a little bit anti-innovation. But it's interesting, too, is everybody says they want innovation, but we still struggle in the defense industry to bring the end users to the innovation and technology delivers in a, let's say, an efficient fashion, okay? So that's my experience there in the environment that we're in. So innovation in the defense industry, innovators and leaders have to be, experts across that whole dynamic spectrum, right? And then let me throw out an example for what I'm doing in my portfolio. I have a program manager that runs this for me, but it's in my portfolio. We have a training system, right? That's going to be the follow-on training systems of what they do now, to where right now what we do is we listen to data, right, on the ranges, okay? So we have a product that sits on F-18 or on tactical jet aircraft and actually shares data between the aircraft and shares it on the ground, right? So people can actually manage the training event, make sure they get the objectives they want out of that training event, and then record all that data, and then post-mission, you debrief it, right? It's kind of a bit of that knowledge transfer, right? But, that's from a tactical aviation perspective. So that's what our current systems do. This future system, the Joint Secure Integrated Live Vertical Constructive System, is going to take that same architecture, but inject synthetic threats, okay, into the system to now where these aircrew can actually see that new evolving threat from our adversaries before it's even fielded, right? And actually be able to be ready for when those things are fielded, so we still maintain our national overmatch that we always want, right, with our military forces. So that's what that is. But just to get that done, you got Cubic and Boeing working together. We're working on software-defined radios, data links, multiple levels of security. That data we're working through is unclassified up to top classified level, top secret level, right? So that presents challenges. And then you have aircraft integration. Oh my goodness, just doing it on outside of an aircraft platform. Now you want to integrate into mission computers and flight control software. Talk about regulation, right? I mean, again, these are just an example of the environment of what we're doing. And if you step outside of that, well, you still have the U.S. Navy as a stakeholder, the U.S. Air Force. They're misaligned on a lot of the ways they want to do things. And you have the international element here with the Royal Australian Air Force as part of this project. And then you have OSD, right? Office of Secretary of Defense kind of sits above the DoD, right, the Department of Defense, and can kind of push money and projects and known things they want certain ways into the DoD. And then, of course, you have, Congress, right, special interest things. I would bet, right, there's special interest things from either state or federal things in the oil and gas industry as well. So that's something that innovators and leaders in the defense industry have to work with as well. So, yeah, that's great, Waylan. But from a leadership perspective, it's quite a contrast to the Marine Corps. Now, we have in the defense industry professional organizations, there's formalized training and evaluation, there's promotions, there's experience, of course, that comes with all this as well, right? But from my experience, it's not nearly as focused, right, and a part of the culture, right, of breeding leaders and innovators. So that's one kind of thing's a little bit different, but it's still there. The other piece, and we talked about, it's interesting, right, the YPP, right, so the skill and knowledge transfer, that's part of the defense industry, but again, it's more ad hoc from what I've seen. And again, I know I'm a one-trick pony. I've worked for one defense company after this, but your buddies talk, right? I mean, and how's Lockheed, right? How's Boeing? How's other, international companies like CAE and Dassault? I mean, it's all the same everywhere. So again, it's a bit different than the defense industry in my perspective on some of these things in the Marine Corps. But, the recruitment and hiring piece, that happens in the Marine Corps a little bit, but it's almost like a strategy that I see in defense industry where they want to bring someone from the outside in. And I think someone else made a comment earlier today that sometimes those people, it's hard for them to adapt to the culture, or they got to play catch-up ball with the designs and technology. So anyway, just from a leadership, right, experience that I have in the defense industry, that's something I see, and it's not always successful, right? It's a challenge, right? In any case, if you're coming in from the outside, don't get me wrong, it works, but it's a challenge to kind of be able to pick up and go on day one. All right. So that's great, Waylan. Okay, so what? So I'll truncate this a little bit. But for me, I have personal observations on kind of what works in the Marine Corps and defense industry from a leadership and innovator perspective. Okay, one of the biggest things that, a good successful leader that I've seen, they apply pressure for their teams or the people within their teams to grow, right? There's push and pull that's part of that, right? You can push somebody with goals and objectives, and you can pull them with incentives. Right, but one of the biggest things for me, if you make them believers, if they understand why and they get that commitment in here, right, because they're going to actually pull you along with them. So again, that's one of the successful things I've seen in both industries. The other piece is that the leaders push people a bit to go into positions of greater responsibility or authority, and or go into higher technical acumen, right, by getting them that tech training they need also to be a very effective part of the team. So that's number one. The second one is basically you capitalize on individual people's gifts, right, and their talents. I think that resonated through a couple of different discussions earlier today. And really the big thing is you got to discover what people are, right? Those personal relationships that we talked about, Chris talked about at the beginning, vision relationships, I think. That's key to success and innovation. That's my experience. And again, part of that is understanding where people's strengths are and employing them correctly. And then the other piece for me, this is specifically an aviation perspective, realize not all team members are going to mature into the highest return on investment, let's just call it that, right, that they can actually give to the organization at the same rate, right? Everybody hears, hey, the light bulb clicked. I can't tell you how many times I saw that from an aviation perspective, people who thought they had it and they lost it, or people who are like, man, I'm having to bust my butt, and then all of a sudden it pays off, right? All that preparation, now that person is going to be your next 2-ship or 4-ship aircraft leader going into combat that you trust. So again, that's something else, like from a number 2 perspective for a successful leader. The third one here is, and I think this is probably the greatest, is like those leaders and innovators, they create the environment for success, right? There's multiple facets into this one, but some of the big things for me is ensure the teams are resourced and that they're trained, right? The Marine Corps, I already said, I wasn't resourced to influence the development of the technology, and oftentimes I had to work real hard to keep those airplanes flying. Can I get a witness, Tim? Right? Okay, exactly. In the Marine Corps, it's hard to keep material readiness good, but you got to fight for that for your people to actually work. And then, of course, from the training perspective, I think we all understand you've got to be ready on your game for the technical acumen. The other piece, from creating that environment for success that I see is you have to keep that team focused. There's a lot of external pressures or distractions, right, to get the team members out there. We're a matrix organization. Oh my goodness, it's hard to keep people allocated if I can only cover them 50% of the time. Okay, but the point is successful leaders and innovators have to create this environment, and I kind of think of it as an umbrella, right, to keep those distractions outside. And a lot of time that umbrella, I use that term specifically because a lot of it comes from higher, right, within the organization, and you got to make sure as that leader to kind of keep that out of the way from your innovation teams. So that's pretty much it. I wasn't watching the clock very much. I don't know if we have any extra time. Do we have a couple minutes for questions or anything, Chris? 1 minute?
You have 10 minutes left.
I have 10 minutes, so I hit 20 minutes just right? Wow, that's good for an old F-18 dude. Okay, so with that, that's kind of my presentation. Again, I think all of our different industries and markets were very similar. It's very dynamic. Okay, you need innovation, you need leaders to succeed in there. And again, from my perspective, growing leaders is one of the most important things an organization can do again, to create that environment for success. So I'm done. I'll shut up and see if there's any questions or anything else.
Any questions?
I think that this group of people here come from the neighborhood or kind of lifestyle. Majority are way smart people who come out and do all these great, you know what I mean? So we had the wing, when the Hornets had the wing smart issue.
Yep.
This group of people here would be the ones who come out and do all that work.
Right.
Would be the innovators who come out and teach guys here quick.
Right.
That's how I put that together.
Yeah. So I think what I think Tim was talking about is like, so, yeah, so real quick, I'll just expand on that just a little bit. So the airplanes that I flew were built in 1985. So again, when I say a little bit of similarity, okay, they weren't built in 1940s and 50s like a lot of the gas and oil pipelines we're talking about, but they age. I mean, they're like NASCARs. They're on the track every day, and you're beating the crap out of those things. I mean, and so when they start to have fatigue, right, a lot of metal fatigues, a lot of former fatigues and stuff like that, you know, I would have people who were working on F-18s for 20 years come up to me and say, hey, sir, I've never seen that before, right? So we needed innovative teams. And interesting you say this is like, we weren't good at that, right? So, and I told you I deployed with 12 airplanes. I actually had 23 airplanes on the books to make 12. Does that make sense? Because of the readiness issues we had, because there's such a backlog of the teams that could come out there from an engineering perspective. One, assess, okay, detect, right? Detect the, help me out with that one. Detect. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah. So they had to do the detect piece, then they had to assess it, get approval from Boeing, right, to make the fix because it had flight certification on it, and then actually make it. So we had a big constraint on that. So bottom line, I think, Tim, what you're saying is like, it's the same thing for us here as well. There's a market for it. Chris has asked me about it. I got to go look for it and see where we can do. But does that kind of answer your point? Okay. All right.
Waylan, great job, man.
Is that good? Okay. All right.
I got to get a picture with you.
How do you? Okay.
It's all about the Kira's LinkedIn post.
Is that what it is? Okay. All right, man.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right,
Thank you
man.
very
Hey,
much.
thank you. Thanks a lot. Hope that hit the mark.
He did. He might.
Yep.